Chapter 8, Offline or Traditional Media. We're going to look at what media are advertisers investing in today, how do the various media build reach, and how are television, radio, print, and out-of-home media bought and sold today. Over $182 billion was spent on advertising in 2015. That number rises every year except during the recession. Over 1/3 of every dollar is spent on television advertising. The categories of media are a bit messier now, but it's more descriptive to talk in terms of video, audio, display, and social and mobile. Video encompasses all moving messages, whether on television, through the computer, or even moving images on out-of-home boards. Audio is not just radio, but includes streaming radio, Pandora, Spotify, and podcasting. Display describes any two-dimensional image, so it includes newspapers, magazines, display ads online, and search. Social we'll look at separately, as it's not only built for two-way communications, but also encompasses both display and video. And finally, mobile gets its entirely own chapter as it defies all conventions. To make things simple, we look at offline and online media separately. This is mostly because of how audiences are measured, and how they are bought and sold differs. But nothing works in isolation anymore, so you'll see in later on that ultimately everything comes together in an integrated plan fashion. For video, this means television display equals newspaper, magazines, and out-of-home audio. We're going to pretend that these 10 households represent our universe. We'll notice that 2 of the 10 households didn't watch any programs that we aired our commercials on this week. So the reach of our schedule is 80%. We reached 80% of the homes with at least one ad. We can now calculate ratings for each of the shows. Empire was watched in 50% of the households, so that equates to a 50% rating. The same with Big Bang Theory, and Survivor, on the other hand, was only viewed by 40% of the homes, so that's a 40 rating. Based on the chart you see here, you can now calculate the reach, frequency, and GRP of our schedule. The total gross rating points that we purchased were 140, and we reached 80% of the households. By dividing the GRP by the reach, we discover that we reached each person an average of 1.75 times. Up until now, we've been talking about ratings in general, but there is actually a difference between how many people are watching the program content and how many people are watching the commercials. How many times do you flip during a commercial break? Nielsen and Rentrack reports out program ratings and commercial ratings separately. Nielsen calculates how many people on average were watching during the program content over a quarter-hour period. They then also report on how many people were tuned in during the commercial breaks. That allows advertisers to only pay for the people who actually tuned in during the commercial breaks, versus those additional people who were watching only during the programming content. Once advertisers were able to separate out the commercial ratings that represented a risk to the ad sellers, because the ratings were lower, so advertisers could negotiate to pay less. Luckily, around the same time, DVRs became ubiquitous, and people were watching shows after their live airings recorded. So the seller said, wait, you should pay for the additional eyeballs that are exposed to your ad during DVR playback. So after much negotiation, the industry settled on a C3 rating. Advertisers only pay for the commercial audiences, but they also pay for anyone who watches it within 3 days of playback. 3 days was a compromise position, as many advertisers argued, mostly retailers, that the live airing of their ads mattered, and 7 days later in their message may have been lost. You'll see some deals guarantee on C7 ratings today, but C3 remains the primary metric. Television is sold in very specific marketplaces: the upfront market and the scatter market. The upfront market, 80% of inventory is sold, and it usually occurs in May. Advertisers will buy October and September. Ratings are guaranteed and the best inventory is available, favorable pricing, and they have out clauses available. Scatter marketplace operates on a quarterly basis and consists of unsold inventory or upfront inventory that was given back out via clauses. There's no guarantee of ratings, and it's at the mercy of remaining inventory, and you often can pay a premium. And this one deals with the laws of supply and demand. Display media is offline. Display media consists of magazines, newspapers, and out-of-home, and accounts for 25% of all ad spending. While newspapers have struggled throughout the 21st century, 25% of newspapers have gone out of business, and print readership is at an all-time low. Key national newspapers are surviving. They are not without their challenges, though. Much of newspaper ad revenue was lost through the shift of classified dollars going online. They also suffered through much of news content readership moving online, with the ability to monetize that readership. The New York Times and the Wall Street Journal have found some success at creating paywalls, however. Reliance on the printed form of newspaper is declining. While people are still turning to the digital editions, newspaper publishers have struggled to monetize the digital readership. And as John Oliver pointedly remarks, that has led to reductions in staff of newspapers to the point that many important events, especially locally, are not being covered. If the traditional print journalism industry doesn't find a way to convince people to pay for their content, the future of it will surely be different. The New York Times and the Wall Street Journal have been the most successful at getting people to pay for their content. Each costs about $15 a month, and they both boast over 700,000 digital subscribers. Newspaper audiences are bought based on circulation, and circulation is the number of newspapers sold. Rates are set based on the circulation and page size or color, and volume discounts are offered for larger buys. The magazine industry has managed to maintain penetration at a higher rate than newspaper, and there are actually more magazines published today than there were 10 years ago. One advantage for magazines is that they have worked hard to adapt to the digital landscape. Print, online, and mobile editions are combined in subscriptions to leverage readership wherever it happens. Unlike newspapers, magazines are bought based on readership, and readership takes pass-along into account. Readership is measured by MRI and Simmons. Another consideration is newsstand versus subscription sales. Newsstand sales are single copy sales, and subscriptions are based on larger subscription orders. Like newspaper, you negotiate page rates and volume discounts, and magazines tend to offer more added value opportunities. The category of out-of-home encompasses a wide variety of formats. Traditionally thought of as billboards, it's grown to include ads in malls, doctor's offices, airports, and all methods of transit. Buses, trains, subways, taxis, you name it. Out of the home is also sometimes called ambient media. OOH is generally bought based on the audience counts, which is measured by the Traffic Audit Bureau, or TAB. These audience ratings are applied just like they are in television and priced based on the targetability and desirability of the location. One thing to note with OOH is that the primary consideration of local media. Buying OOH nationally is extremely cost prohibitive, so it's generally used to heavy up a national campaign in the important markets, to leverage a local event or campaign, or through the use of franchisee dollars where, for example, a local McDonald's franchise is pooling money with the McDonald's corporately to drive traffic to a desired location. Radio is primarily a local medium, with 90% of all radio dollars being placed in local radio markets. The other 10% goes to a few key competitors with the national radio programs. Each medium does a better job impacting consumers at different points along the purchase funnel. This simple graph can serve as a guide for which media are best to consider given the stage along the pathway that you want to make an impact. Let me know if you have any questions.